got much deep into. But at the end of the day, it was more enjoyable to watch you than trying to listen to whatever he was trying to get on, because it was just I was literally surprised at one point he didn't mention aliens. I was literally waiting for him to be like, aliens helped it, but he went to angels.
Oh, that's good, was it? Okay, I gotta watch this now.
Yeah, when
Angels
he
are
went
aliens.
on the rant of the Egyptians, I thought this gives me like an Ancient Aliens vibe on the History Channel. Like, seriously.
It's odd
like how could people with chisels and hammers build the pyramids? Like, what?
They use ramps. They don't use ramps too, right? No.
Yeah, and so there's a few different ways they could have done it. I think the wooden rollers is out of the question, but using sort of water to stop the friction of these things is pretty, it's pretty well known, and that they weren't stupid. They were very, very good at what they did. It's not I don't know. I just don't have a problem with them. But it's weird that he brought up Egypt, because Egypt is an example of where civilization, continued up to the flood, through the flood, and after the flood without being affected by the world being covered in water at all.
Yeah.
Strangely enough.
And I will say on that point, that you just brought up, is like, I always hear a lot of people bring up, there's lots of civilizations around the world that talk about a global flood. And I go, but here's the problem with that. If there was a global flood and everything was covered in water, how would they have been able to be there to then write about it?
I can answer that one. I can answer the usual one for that one is that they didn't. They were descendants of people from the 8 people on the ark that spread out and took the legends with them. But the problem with that is the flood is always local to their area. Like, for instance, the Chinese talk about the Yangtze River flooding, for instance. And there's civilizations with no record of flood. Like the Japanese went through the entire period without, any reference to a flood at all. So you don't know, like, I don't know how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Plus, to be honest, like, even if those people, like, taking what you said, like, even if those people were descendants of Noah, moved to those areas, the problem is you would still have that same problem of, like, like when they did in school, where they'd have everybody line up, say one thing to one person on one end, by the end of it, it'd be completely different. So, like, it probably wouldn't be about a flood, it'd probably be about something else.
Possibly, but they wouldn't be talking about the flood in relation to the areas they live with. They'd be talking about the flood as in a long time ago in a faraway land. There was, we were there and there was a flood, and then we spread out to here. It wouldn't be this. Well, that particular river that we live around was flooded, because they don't come from that area.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen in that area while they were there. It happened in another place. So, and plus, when you talk about sort of these legends of floods, a lot of the timelines don't match up. They're not in the right time for the global flood. So they've got problems there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ita, welcome to the stage. How are you? And give us your thoughts on.
Good to see
so
my
far,
friends.
we've discussed the general opinions on the debate. His opening, and now we're talking about my opening. So feel free to talk about any of those things.
Can I cover all those 3 things really fast?
Yeah.
Great. The overall debate, I love to see my co-host kicking butt. I'm plugging in our Tell Me That Story. But, Max and I co-host a show together, and I'm always happy to see Max at it. And I think Max is a great debater. So I'm just, not only do I like Max as a person, but I think he's a really good debater too. And I think he really kicked butt in this debate, in my opinion. So that's my overall feeling. Lots of crazy conspiracies, obviously. I mean, this is what we expect. Hearing about ancient civilizations. There's no, I think... going into the first opening, he starts talking about ancient Egyptian civilization. Like, there's this movie called 10,000 BC by the German director, and he has these kinds of theories too, where he tries to present that ancient civilizations. I mean, it's a cool story for movies and films, but to actually believe it's real, we don't have evidence to believe it. So I don't know why we would want to just take that belief without actually having evidence. I mean, if you want to think about it, cool, awesome. But that was his basically, what was the guy's name?
Evidence of God.
Evidence of God. So Evidence of God was trying to go into, he was going into what I would call like Atlantean theory myth, you know, that there was this ancient, there's a great game that I love from when I was a kid called Chrono Trigger, and that's the same idea.
Ooh, yes.
In Chrono Trigger, you teleport to time, and you go to this ancient civilization, because that's the idea in Chrono Trigger, is it takes that theory that people were actually super civilized back in, you know, millions of years ago, and then they had some fall from grace, and they lost everything. You know, they became too corrupt, they bought into too much power, and they lost everything, you know, and then they kind of regressed. So this idea exists for certain people. They believe this idea. So he basically spent his whole opening trying to persuade us that, wow, the ancient Egyptians had this special secret esoteric knowledge, and, you know, that's how they could do all of these kinds of things. And I'm like, okay, what is your evidence of that? That's where your counter argument is. You came right in and you started talking about the Pangea and the things that he was talking about, the ancient Egyptian stuff. And you're like, okay, you just presented a bunch of conjecture. Where's your evidence for any of this?
If I can just say something quickly, I want to go get some lunch and sort of, I just dropped in to sort of talk about something with Max quickly, but I did see his opening, and the one thing I noticed before I had to go do my stream was that for someone called Evidence of God, there was no evidence. Like, this is what I put in the chat. Like, he was just saying, hey, the Bible says this, it is claimed this, like, you know, these people in ancient Egypt were doing pyramids. These people in the Bible, it says this, and it's like, there was zero evidence through the entire thing. Like, not even hey, this is a parallel that we found in modern society. You know, like there was nothing besides claims. And for someone called Evidence of God, you'd expect there to be some stuff put in there. But I will watch the debate, Max, and thank you for having me on. I'm going to get something to eat, but yeah, absolutely awesome.
Bon appetit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say,
hold on. Let's Ita finish his point, and we'll jump right back to you, Batman.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to wrap up what I was saying. I appreciate you, Max. Like, and I'm sorry, Batman.
No, you're fine.
Thank you. The point that I was going to say is, you totally countered it. You're like, yeah, I had to come in and be a pinch hitter in this debate, and you did a great job. You just came in and you were like, okay, I'm going to address your points. And he really just doesn't. I just felt that you kind of took out all of the points. It was not. The point is, the debate is about, is Noah's Ark, did the flood occur? Like, did this Noah's Ark actually happen, right? So if this Noah's Ark actually happened, this is the thing I would be needing to see. Like, I went to the Ark encounter. It's cute, but I mean, I don't really believe that the Ark would actually happen. This is fun. These are fun things, but I don't literally believe it's real. But like, the idea is you need to have extremely advanced, you know, technology. Like, for that time, you need to know how to like make like nails and stuff. They didn't have that type of technology back then. You know, they didn't have the kind of smithing to do. You know, like the Iron Age was not there. You know, from our understanding of when this was supposed to have occurred, they didn't have these types of things. So how could they have built this thing? That's what he needed to spend the whole argument, is proving this situation. And this is where it's gonna sound bad, but I said this in the chat. You got to be a scientist of some sort to try to make this argument, and you need to really be good at engineering. You have to understand how this ark was built, because you're gonna have, first of all, you have to explain the dimensions of the ark, because at that time you would have to have the certain kind of technology to make this ark float. You know, you would have to explain that you could take some kind of metaphorical thing and say it's actually a much smaller boat than it really is. But these people are literalists, so they are going to say, well, it's 8 cubits by whatever, so on and so forth. You got to prove this thing. That's what I would have expected from his opening argument. But we heard about ancient Egyptians and esoteric societies, and I'm like, that's cool. That's great science fiction. Very good fantasy, very good science fiction. We love that. We're going to watch that movie and have a good time. But it's not real life. So you got to prove the real life of this situation before we can even get anywhere with this situation. Not done. And I think your opening argument is just like, dude, I don't even have to do much. You just said a bunch of stuff. You can't prove any of it. Okay, let's move on. So that's my kind of analysis. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shift the eyes. Yeah, go ahead, Batman.
No, go ahead and say what you got to say real quick.
I was just going to say that acuity is the length of a forearm. Yeah, but my forearm is not the same as yours, and it's not the same as Shaquille O'Neal's forearm. So
yeah, that's why we don't measure feet by actual feet anymore. Everyone's feet different. But I will say though, on the Ark encounter, because you said you went there and you're bringing up like the tools and stuff, that the one thing I think is funny, because actually when I watched years ago when Bill Nye actually went to the Ark encounter, looked at all this stuff, like they had literally a area set up showing tools that there's no way they could have created in that time period. They had like actual metal saws and stuff. I'm like, what? No, that makes no sense at all. Like, no, I'm sorry, not possible. But the one thing I will say that I thought was absolutely crazy that he said to you was, saying that like, because you brought up like Matt Dillahunty and stuff, and I was expecting you to say Aaron Raw as well, but there was a lot you had to get through. But and he's just like, I think it's interesting that these atheists always say they read the Bible, but yet people that like me who actually read it, and I'm like, wait a minute, but didn't you bring up a lot of stuff that supposedly happened with Noah's Ark when it's literally not in the very book that we actually read before the debate? Like a lot of the stuff he was bringing up wasn't even in there. So it's like he's saying that we don't know anything about the Bible, yet he was bringing up stuff that's not even in the story of Noah and the Ark. So it's like I'm confused here. It's like, so you're trying to say you're a scholar and you understand the book, but yet you're bringing up stuff that wasn't even in the story, So it's just that's the one thing I do not like. And when he said like, atheists and stuff like that, they just like to bring, find the worst stuff in there. I'm like, well, those things do actually matter, and that's the reason why a lot of people bring those up, is because it's like, okay, if you believe the Bible is true, then how do you justify these things? It's mostly because they want to ignore those things. They want to be like, oh, well, those ones we don't go by. I'm like, well, your God said to do it. Like I bring up sometimes with Christians when I'm debating them, I go, it says in your book, parents are allowed to stone their children to death for being disobedient. Why don't you do that? Well, that we don't do anymore. I'm like, well, but your God said to do it, so why aren't you doing it? Like, it's just like those things still matter. You can't just ignore them, or like when he said like God had everything lined up. He doesn't make mistakes. It's like, I don't know. He said a lot of awful things, especially like it's okay to own another human being, but
I used your argument that when you go the scientific route with the holy text, you're taking away from the text. I think that's a very strong argument, and I always have to thank you every time I use it because it's yours. I didn't come up with it. Isa taught that to me, and I made it mine because it's so strong.
Gracias, hermano. I wanted to make one comment too. One thing people have to understand about the Tanakh, it's a story about Hebrew people. So like people take this text and they're like, well, and particularly, and I'm not trying to ethnic culturalize this thing, but I think it's important. Primarily people of European ancestry have done this replacement theory where they have become the Jews. They're saying, I am the Jewish people of the Hebrew text. But the text is talking about Hebrew people in an ancient time and an ancient context. And I think that that's a problem. People are like, oh no, I don't want to talk about the cultural thing, but I'm like, it is important. It's a very important thing. And again, I think we should honor different people's cultures, but I think it's very bizarre to be like a trans Jew, where, I have transracialism, but it's like a trans Jew. You're like, I am these people. I'm the people of the Torah. And I'm like, these people had a very specific thing that was going on. These people had to do Shabbat and Kashrut and all of these kinds of things. You don't want to do all that stuff. Those people don't want to do any of those things. So then they're saying Jesus comes in. When it comes to doing all those rules, Jesus comes in. But when it comes to all the benefits and all the perks, they're going to take all of that. So it's this really kind of hackney-eyed approach of looking at the text instead of, and again, like we need to grant the text from its time. We have to historically view it. We're looking at an ancient Hebrew people. Maybe they were Canaanites. We don't really know. That may have evolved throughout time. We're not exactly sure what exactly happened through a historian narrative, but that's one argument. But it's ancient Hebrew people that had a certain kind of situation that they were engaging with and living through. And we have to look at it through that lens. But when we have people now saying, I'm going to take the text and I am now the arbiter of the text, I mean, you don't even know about your own culture. That man probably doesn't know anything about his own ancestors and his own culture, because what he's done is he's projected himself onto this Jewish culture, which I think is bizarre and weird and strange, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah. I'm going to read a couple of messages. David says, honestly, Max did great. I actually enjoyed it. Thank you so much, David, for all the support you give to the channel. Criminal Loden, your opponent was saying something about the oldest tree being like 4,000 years old. There is one in Sweden named Old Tjiko that is estimated to be around 9,500. Yeah, and that argument was bizarre. Like there should be millions, and I don't know if trees can, like entropy is a thing, even though the trees can be very long-lasting lives compared to humans. I would need to see a citation of a scientist actually saying trees are immortal, because that, I mean, and they're more, the limitation may be more on the side of environmental things, but it would also depend on the type of tree. So the idea that we should have ancient trees all over the place, that is just bizarre.
And I will say, if that tree is 9,500 years old, that definitely makes the creationist whole 6,000-year-old Earth, you know, kind of go out the window at that point.
It would have been flooded.
Oh, our good friend Max gifted 5 Matters Now membership. Nice. Thank you, Max. Thank you so much. And let's see who they fell on. Oh, Shifty Eyes Shady, BTF Wayne, Daryl Frost, Mark Reed, Bigus Dogus. Thank you so much, Max. And he says he's going back to work, but thank you so much, Max. And if you get a chance, watch the debate and give me your impressions when you get a moment. Next message. Chase Hatchet says, yeah, but water lubricates the tectonic plates. Water doesn't lubricate.
Yeah, try using water to lubricate an engine.
Yeah.
Your saliva does better than water.
I didn't think of that analogy. My mind went straight to shower sex. That was I mean, that's my experience with water not lubricating. What do you want me to tell you?
It was funny though. It was definitely more funny than the engine one, yeah.
Yeah. Sydney Raptor says, Max found it. The reference is the Earth 3.2 billion years ago was a water world of submerged continents, geologists say, after analyzing oxygen isotope data from oceanic crust now. Thank you so much, Sydney. That was literally killing me. Binge Thinker says, the Ark had refrigeration, HVAC, poop and food conveyors, a convertible top, not to mention a bowling alley. Thanks so much.
Hey, don't forget it also had a hot tub.
Yes. How
you supposed to relax after a hard day of work of scooping up poop? Gotta relax those muscles, man.
The funny thing is, it's a story. Like, it's so unbelievable.
God ate all the poop, so you don't have to worry about it. Easy.
I mean, no, he turned it to candy.
The problem with the literalistic reading of the story is that the animals would just consume each other.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
You know, look at Life of Pi. It's a funny rendition, but like the animals were killing and eating each other on the raft, you know, and it was like in a couple minutes. How could these animals endure surviving? And, you know, like another weird thing is if we're literally taking the story, if you're saying 2 of each creature, what about like microbial, like, you know, microscopic creatures? Do we have a space for the microscopic creatures? And how does Noah pick up the microscopic creatures to put there? How about if there's giant creatures? Where are they going to be? Like, the thing is, it's like, this is why we should never buy into literalism. It makes absolutely no sense. It's ridiculous.
Maybe
And
the moral of
speaking-
the story is to not believe in everything you're told.
Yeah, and speaking
Yeah, pretty
of the animal stuff, when he said that, you know, the animals didn't eat meat, and I was like, wait a minute, didn't the Bible start like after Adam and Eve did the whole tree thing, that then things started to then consume meat? So it's like, wait, so you're telling me like before the flood happened, God was like, okay, I'm gonna make them not eat meat again, and then after the ark, okay, then go back to eat meat. I'm like, just like I was like, wait, I'm so confused because your general
but that
book said
goes
that. You
that
know,
goes against all the science we know, because lions have their jaw and their teeth like that because they eat meat. It makes no sense to say that lions were ever vegetarian, because they wouldn't have that morphology if they were. So it's always a collection of bizarre arguments in
Yeah.
that sense. A couple of other messages we have here. Pipin Patricio, I have a friend who's a Catholic and a prostitute. Can I have her number? And when we argue about this, she says, but God says he loves you and will go to heaven if you love me. And there is no way to explain to her. I don't see a problem with this. Jesus was in favor of prostitutes, and on this channel, we support sex workers. So
yeah.
give me her number. No,
And
just kidding.
speaking of heaven, actually, one thing, because I was watching this one video and the person brought up a good example of that. Basically, heaven would be just like hell, you know. And somebody was said to him, was like, well, why would that be? He's like, well, hell is supposed to be this place you get tortured for all eternity, right? But if you're in heaven and you're living in the perfect place where nothing really changes for eternity, like after a while, that itself would be hell, because you have no need to learn anything new. And they actually kind of did a concept like that on what was that show, The Good Book or whatever
The
it
Good
was,
Place.
I forget. The Good Place, yeah, where like they finally get to heaven, and like a lot of those people like that were like philosophers, you know, from like way back in the day, you know, just kind of became this blob, you know, because there was like no need to learn anything new. And that itself, I think, would be hell. Like, what's the point of living for all eternity if you're just gonna live in paradise forever? It's like I want to learn new things. I want to explore. You know, it's like I don't know.
Yeah. Let me keep on reading a couple more. Robin, great job, Max, and then gifted one membership. Thank you so much for all you do for us, Robin. And it went to Chase Hatchet. So be sure to thank Robin for her gift. And the next message I have said here, there were 5 major civilizations persisted through the flood: Chinese, Neolithic dynasty, Egyptian, 4th, 5th, and 6th dynasty, Mesopotamians, Sumerians, and Peruvian Norte Chico dynasty. Sydney Raptor bringing us the details on the debate. I should have paid more attention, but it seems like cheating to get information from the audience. And a couple more, and we'll jump right back into the discussion. If Yahweh is the creator of all, who made the formless waters? And that this is something BTF Wayne said, that even as a Christian, it was a question that he had. And we would have to go back into the Genesis myth, but it's a very valid question, because even before creation, there seems to have been stuff there. And finally, the last message I have saved for now, Clever says, the art is what started my journey out of religion.
And I do want to say real quick, we got 34 people watching, 2 likes. Let's get those likes in.
Yeah.
Really helps get things out.
Otherwise, we will get the world will end tomorrow. Who knows?
Yeah.
If you don't hit that like button, the rapture will come. You've been warned.
Speaking of the world ending, I actually posted it in the chat here, but found this cool site where you put the year you were born, and it'll tell you how many apocalypses you've survived. So far, I've survived 45. So if I've survived that many, I think I'll survive this one as well.
Yeah, let me share that for the audience. So if you want to check that out, you can enter the year of your birth, and it will tell you how many apocalypses you have survived. I have survived 43. So that's very interesting. And if anyone is interested, I'm saving the paper. Someone, who was it that sent me? It was Mogi. Mogi did some digging and found the paper he was referring to, the paper talking about the chromosome Y degradation. So I have this saved up to read as homework, because I'm pretty sure he's just misinterpreting the paper. And as Sydney said, the next the next sentence after he stopped reading, it debunked him. So it's very interesting how people use these papers, and this came up during the debate. I mentioned it, that okay, you're accepting these words of the paper, but the sentence right after, oh no, the million years, I don't like that. So I don't think you can do that. That is called cherry picking, and that's not
well, I think I kind of understand what his interpretation might have been. Like, so what it says is that the X and Y chromosomes came from a pair of autosomes approximately 180 million years ago. So they're sort of like mutated to some degree in order to have some sort of partial amount of information. And I think this might be his association with this pure-unpure connection that was being made between the animals that get selected on the ark. I'm not sure what he was insinuating in terms of like what species were chosen to actually be on the raft itself. Mm-hmm. That was kind of unclear for me.
Well, and the other thing, I'm actually, well, I know there was already a lot of stuff going on, but like, when it comes to the chromosomes, like people aren't born with just 2. Sometimes they're born with 3 or 4, so that's because I've actually been doing some digging in that, because, with other subjects. But that was something I found interesting, is like people are born with some extra ones. That's the reason why there's more, stuff going on in the body, and how we present and stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. So that's one thing I'm surprised, like he didn't know that they've actually been learning and stuff, especially about the chromosomes and the DNA, and how we're finding more and more stuff that people are born actually a specific way, and whatnot. So
I couldn't remember the exact, but I know this is a common lie about the lady that found soft tissue in the. And I promise I'll go back to figure out the evidence, and we might do a show if I get the evidence from him on an email, because I know this is something they do lie about, Mary Shelley constantly, and the dinosaur soft tissue, but I couldn't remember the exact. And again, I didn't have any preparation time. If I had, I would probably have that down somewhere, because I know this is a typical lie from the young Earth creationist side, and it killed me not remembering the specifics on that, but I know that the gist was that they constantly lie about her. So
I do know that she was scared to release that information, because she knew that people would use it to spin it, in a different way.
All right, I'm going to hand it over to Billy. Give us your thoughts on the opening discussion. I'll go get water because my throat is getting a bit tired, and I'll be right back with you. So Billy, take it away.
All right. Well, the main thing I'm going to say is that if somebody says they're young Earth creationist and then they say that they believe in science, that's a contradiction in itself, and I can't take them seriously. Because young Earth creation does not involve science at all, and it rejects it cherry picks certain things in science that don't disprove young Earth creation. But other than that, it definitely has nothing to do with science. And even intelligent design too is probably a better argument than young Earth creation, if you want to be technical. And I would end opening discussion though. Max, you did a good job on pushing him, and I felt like you controlled the debate, and he was a nice guy, so you were able, you're a nice guy too, but I felt like you were able to control the debate more than he was, and you made him look silly, and a lot of people in the chat felt the same way, I believe.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch it while reading the chat, because I wasn't looking at it. But yeah, I seem to have a lot of. There were a lot of people triggered by me. I've heard some, like, I read some bold comments and this atheist doesn't know anything and a bunch of stuff, but those are always interesting, and I
Those
don't
are
take
just
them
trolls.
personally.
Those are
Yeah.
trolls, though. They definitely just want to provoke you into a trap, and then when you actually engage with them, they don't actually present any evidence, or they just repeat the same talking points over and over again to try and antagonize you.
Mogi, thoughts on the open discussion?
Well, I felt like the way you were trying to engage was trying to get I forget, Evidence for God, that was his name. Trying to get Evidence for God to do the kind of thing that Issa is basically asking for, in terms of present your evidence, justify your claims more or less. And it's sort of maybe I would have wished you could have said a little bit more of, like, just directly saying, it's like, how are you arriving at this conclusion? How are you making these connections for the claims that you're saying? But you said it was conjecture, and that's true, right? And that's the main criticism behind it. Maybe you just said it very concisely. What I felt like what he was trying to engage with, at least for his reasoning, was that science is incredible. Therefore, my theories and conjectures are equally credible in that sense.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. Batman, give us your thoughts on the open discussion portion of the debate.
Well, I mean, to be honest, you know, I watched for a while, and then I kind of got, like, my ADHD kicked in. I got kind of distracted by other things, but yeah, it just seemed like, you know, whenever you brought something up, you know, he would kind of take it, but then kind of, you know, go left field with it. It was like where are you going here? Like, you know, you're bringing up stuff that isn't making, like, actual sense. It's more like, you know, like, it felt more like he was writing his own kind of book about what he thinks actually happened, instead of going by what is actually written down in the book itself, you know. And that's the big thing I wish that more people that actually believed in different religions would actually do, is not stray from what is actually written. Because it's like, if we don't fully know what actually happened without any, like, documentation or anything like that, you're kind of assuming, you know. Because there was a lot of things he brought up, you know, like with the whole garden thing and whatnot, you know, that just, a lot of that stuff made no sense to me. It's like, okay, where'd the soil come from? You know, how do you maintain it? Because, you know, if you don't keep certain nutrients in it, you know, you won't be able to grow stuff out of it. There's a lot that goes into that, because I've worked on farms myself, so I know what goes into all that. It's a lot of work. But yeah, it just, you know, you know, yeah, at the end of the day, it's just more of, like, stick to what's written. You know, don't assume unless you have some kind of evidence to back it up, for the most part, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's like with the whole, like, ancient aliens or other stuff. It's like, don't just start throwing stuff at the wall just because it sounds good in your head. You know, now if somebody started out being like, this is just my own opinion, this isn't actually based on any evidence, but this is something I think about, that I'm okay with. I'm okay with that. But if somebody presents it as like, this is true, you know, this is fact, it's like, nah, like, don't go down that way unless you have something to back it, you know. So
yeah, too little justifying of those beliefs that he was making.
Yeah.
And I don't think throughout the debate, I was wondering, how would Oz kind of react to a bunch of all of this stuff? And, like, it would have been, like, way worse for him to have actually Oz on that debate. He's way more experienced than me. This was my first formal debate on YouTube. And even though I don't get nervous because I have experience hosting here, it was my first experience, and debate, you get better as you practice. So there were some definitely things I could have done better, and I will go back and watch it tomorrow and and make some mental notes on the stuff that I could have done better. But it would have gone way worse for him with Oz. Oz knows a lot more about science than I do. And he had prepared, he had studied a lot for the debate, so it would have been way worse. Isa, give us your thoughts on the open discussion during the debate.
I mean, there was one part where I was just like, wow. He brought up this idea of indoctrination, that you were indoctrinated. And I'm like, and then you clashed right back, and I was very impressed. I knew this was your first formal debate. And you were really cool. You're really smooth. You did not worry about his things. It didn't faze you. And one of the things I noticed is you smiled a lot. It was funny. You're like, dude, you're just insane, man. Like, that's what I felt. You're like, this dude has just said another crazy thing. Every time you smile, you're like, yep, that's another crazy thing that was said. But he started saying that you're indoctrinated in atheism. This is something I hate from theists. In general, they misrepresent and strawman atheists and say, you have a belief. You have a faith. And I'm like, dude, I studied religion, like academically speaking. That's not what atheism means. Atheism doesn't have a doctrine. There is no doctrine of atheism. You know what an atheist is? It's someone who just doesn't believe in God or lives life that God doesn't exist. A lot of my family are atheists. They don't believe in anything. They believe in being a good person. That's it. They don't have a religion. There is no faith. You know what I mean?
They're irreligious. They're irreligious.
Yeah,
so
and
they
there's
don't
a lot
believe
of people,
in religion.
Exactly. And there's a lot of people who might even be like Christian, and they're the same as these other people. They're just like, yeah, it's a cultural thing. They don't really believe in it. And it's just like, it's sickening when people say this. And I'm like, you're projecting. This is a projection. You're projecting and saying, oh, you're indoctrinated. Indoctrinated by what? And in fact, most people, they grew up in their family had some connection to a religion. And then people are like, yeah, I'm not really into it. It's not my thing. You know what my religion is? It's music. That's my religion. I like music. I like playing music. I like listening to music. That's my religion.
Yeah.
That would be a better argument. If he said that's your religion, Max, I'd be like, okay, that's a fair religion. But if you're saying atheism your religion, no, that's not your religion. That's the bull crap. And I was just so mad when he said that. And then you just said, dude, you're really indoctrinated. Your Christianity and belief in the Bible, because believing in the Bible is not indoctrination, according to him. It's hypocrisy. It's a standard of hypocrisy. And that's what I felt when I was listening. I'm like, dude, you're really out of it, man. And I've seen this with a lot of theists. I'm like, you have cognitive dissonance. You have no idea what you're talking about. You have no idea what you're thinking. You don't know how to engage your opponents. And you're not even fairly representing them. And you're saying they believe in a religion. No, you believe in a religion. You believe Jesus died for your sins, okay? That's fine. That's your religion. Don't tell other people what their religion is. Don't speak to what they believe and don't believe. Speak to what you believe. And that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, one thing that happens regularly, for example, on the MDD Discord when I have debates about I am a communist in broad terms, but the type of communism I advocate is not the historical communism. It has some caveats because of where I was born, the way we do things here. So when people argue with me, they never engage with what I am saying. They're arguing the historical communism. And it happens a lot that my arguments go unanswered and pretty much unheard because they're not debating me. They're debating their idea of what communism is or was. And one thing that I always say is like, well, but argue with what I'm saying right now. Don't argue with your preconceived ideas of what I should be arguing for. And that tends to happen. And that was funny when he said, well, you're indoctrinated. Well, yeah, but I'm open to changing my mind. I don't have a problem. And I do smile a lot because I always smile, and it's very unlikely that something would get me like offended on a debate. You would have to like say something like truly nasty to me on a debate, and I would just smile and give you an insult that would make you laugh at the insult that I'm giving onto you. So I would take your laugh as a validation. And that would be pretty much the end of it. But yeah, thank you for those for your evaluation. And I think that smiling conveys a lot when you are debating. And even though there were some points where I was like, hey, wait, dude, hold on, stop. I always try to keep the smile, because at the end of the day, I'm having fun, and it's nothing that we say there is going to change the world. And this debate is honestly kind of pointless, because I do come with the idea that you don't have to take the story. It doesn't need to happen to have happened, so you can take any meaning about it. So it's not really important whether the arc happened or not. I'm just trying to combat the literalist interpretation of the Bible, which I think can lead you down some dangerous paths. Because if you believe the earth is 6,000 years old, it doesn't really matter. It's what happens right after that train of thought that then you start doubting radiometric dating, then you start doubting something else, and then you can go down some rabbit holes that are actually dangerous. But I think I try to set up I think I accomplished my goal of showing how his position is untenable. I think I made the points clear. I do know that a few of my explanations went over his head, and I do acknowledge that maybe some of my arguments need polishing, but I'm quite happy with the result for having just jumped into the debate. And it was a cool thing. I was in doubt in the pre-show whether we should read the story or not, but since it's a short story, I said, yeah, what the hell, let's do it. And it turned out to be a good thing in the end. Yeah. I jumped on to check if the debate was starting right at the moment as they were posting that Oz couldn't be on the debate. And Oz, we hope that you get better. I hope that you're not having anything serious, because the message was that he was sick. And I haven't spoken to him all day. He did a stream earlier today, and he looked like he got sunburned. Maybe that's what happened. And,
heat stroke, maybe.
Yeah, and Oz has been he's been better, but he's been having some health issues lately. So we hope that you're okay, and we send you lots of love, and we can't wait to see the material that you bring up from your trip. Anything else you guys would like to mention now? Anything we haven't talked about before?
Well, I'll just
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that when it comes to religions that I follow, the only ones I do are pre-2004 Star Trek and Fallout. Those are my religions.
Yeah, that's cute.
Two completely different directions.
Yes.
Do you know what the old Fallout on like PC, like the early ones that had like the isometric?
Yeah.
Yes, I have them. They gave them away on Epic.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I got them on Steam. Yeah,
I have them. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to the show, it actually got more popular.
Yeah, the show was. Mwah. If you haven't seen it, watch the Fallout show. If you like that game.
Go watch it. It's amazing. I have friends that aren't Fallout people, but they watch the show and they're like, I want to play this game now. Like, this looks like fun.
It's funny that one of the characters is like a Disney star. Like, he was a child Disney star. That's what I think is funny.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I wanted to also comment on was that I'm like, it's the thing that I feel sad in these debates is that, like, when people are being engaged, they don't have any self-reflection. Like, I think the importance of debate, like, I think of like the ancient debaters like Plato and Socrates and Thrasymachus, and they went and sat like in Greece and they would debate these like heavy topics. Their goal was to grow and learn and become better people. And when I see some of these debaters, I'm like, you don't want to grow. What you want to do is indoctrinate. That's your goal of coming on these platforms, is you're trying to indoctrinate people to believe what you're thinking. You're not actually interested in exchanging ideas and growing and developing from those ideas. that to me is really problematic, personally.
It's like what Kent Hovind does,
Yeah.
and all those other young Earth creationists, Ken Hammer and all. I don't know. There's another guy missing. There's a bunch of them, a couple that are major ones.
And one last thing too about the communism, I think it's really funny that people just they what they want to do is that they straw man it. They're disingenuous in straw manning it. Yeah, that's interesting. They're disingenuous in straw manning. What they're doing is they're saying, "Well, look at Stalin. He's a communist." No, first of all, Stalin was it's like an oligarch. It's a Plutarch oligarch, even monarch. These people were not folks that actually supported people. The idea of communism is that people have equal right access to resources. That's the important thing. It's the idea that, unfortunately, these hyper-capitalist societies where people are impoverished and they're sitting on a drain where heat is coming up. I'm in social work, so this is like very important for me. You have heat coming up and they're starving. They don't have food. They don't have shelter. Maslow's hierarchy of needs are not met. This is what communism is seeking out to address, is making sure people have all the resources they can have. The opposition's position nowadays is that, well, they need to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps because it's their own fault of why they're suffering. That's a very bad way of thinking about things. And that's the thing I think where Max is coming from. Max is like, dude, I think everyone has a right to having resources. Nobody should be starving. Nobody should. We're in the 21st century. We have tons of resources. There's a myth of scarcity that capitalists have been putting up. Hyper-capitalists have put this narrative, a myth of scarcity, saying we don't have enough stuff. We do. You know how much stuff waste we do? We throw so much food away because capitalism is like, well, I got to keep making, I have to overproduce food, not enough food. And then I throw tons and tons of food away and it hurts the environment. That food could be going to helping feed people and it creates all this strife. But people are like, well, communism's evil. Look at Stalin, look at Pol Pot, look at whatever, Mao Zedong. I'm like, yeah, these are terrible examples. These people are not communists. These are people who are positioning their own power. That's not what communism is about. Sorry, that's just sure.
Well, and I will say, speaking on that, that's why I always liked the guy named Jacques Fresco. He was born in 1916, and died at 101 in 2017. But he brought up a lot of things like the fact that because he grew up during the Great Depression. And he was like, as a teenager, he was looking around going like, why are people starving? Why are people not being able to survive? Like, all the resources are there. Why don't they just open up the shops? Why don't they go back to farming? Like, we don't need the money to keep things running. You have everything you need. And in today's world, I actually looked it up. The US alone, we produce enough food, we could feed the entire planet 1.5 times, but yet we waste more food than we actually consume. Like, when I've gone by Walmart and seeing 30 shopping carts full of frozen food that isn't bad, because I actually went up and looked at some of the dates on there, the food was still good, but they were just like, nope, we're going to throw it out because, it's more cost effective for us to just throw it out than to give it to people. Because back in late 90s, early 2000s, I used to be able to go to my mall, when they were closing, and go up to all the food court restaurants and get all their leftovers. But then at a certain point, I went to go do that, and they're like, oh yeah, we can't do that. I'm like, why? They're like, because they said we're not allowed to do that because somebody got sick. And I'm like, okay, yeah, somebody got sick. That's the risk you take, taking the leftover stuff. That's just a risk. But and that's the problem, is they're instead of just giving it away, we just waste stuff. We have all the resources in the world to make sure everybody is housed, clothed, and fed, but we don't do that. That's the reason why I've never liked the system we live in, the whole money system, because at the end of the day, it's not helping the regular people. It's always helping the people running the system. And that's why I say we should just work together to do what's best for each other. You know.
And Isa nailed it perfectly. And we have never really gone into talking exactly, but just by knowing me and the interactions we've had, he knows exactly what I mean when I say that I tend to the communist side. And I'm going to address a couple of comments by Peeping Patricio. Why are you a communist? And it's because this I do see that capitalism has brought some progress, but I can't get past the things that capitalism has done to some of the people. And Shifty Eye says, yeah, it's capitalism. Look at Venezuela and North Korea and Cuba are doing so well. North Korea is not communist. When it comes to Venezuela and Cuba, the US is actively working against them. So I don't think it's a fault of the system when you have powers actively working so that your country is worse. So I don't think you can fault the system on that. And Pipin Patricio then said, I don't understand why Max defends communism. Man, that's disappointing. And again, this is literally what I said happens to me all the time. You are not, you're accusing me of defending historical communism. I don't care about that. We do things way different. I'm all about democracy and people getting the rights to vote. I'm not about expropriating anyone's property. I think those things can be done differently and should never be done by force. So it's about pulling everyone up to the same level and not pulling the level down, in my opinion.
It sounds more like socialism than communism, though, if you put it that way, maybe.
Yeah, but that's why I said I'm definitionally sort of like a communist, but I think it's more about bringing the ideas. And the good thing about political ideas is that you can adapt them to the current times. And we live at a time, like Isa and Batman said, that we have enough resources to feed, clothe, and educate every single human being on this planet. And that's what I would love to see. I would love to see everyone have at least a house, food security, and education. Education is a big part of what I believe makes people better. I think education improves everything in a society. And I think that is a lot of what we have to aim for. You can put the label on it that you want. I'm not cared so much about the label. What I care about is helping people realize their hopes, their dreams, having food and shelter and education. That is really what I aim for.
There might be ways to improve education, though. Still.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
It's definitely not perfect.
But I agree that education is heavily the way that we can improve society as a whole. And the Shonuff asks me to repeat a phrase that he asks me to repeat it all the time. He's Vigo! I don't know why, but he finds it funny, so I indulge him. Pipin Patricio, in Cuba, you do more time for killing a cow than for killing a man. I would need a citation on this because I don't believe you. I'm sorry.
One thing I wanted to add to, I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was done.
50 Eyes Shady, because I've been reading this. It seems they, I don't know what their gender is, they're taking a very conservative route. First of all, let's define what communism means. And I'm going to take even like a historical idea. It's a political theory that's coming from Marxism, that's advocating for a class war, that leads to a society where property is publicly owned and each person works and is paid according to their abilities and needs. That's a definition that you can easily find. What these states did was not communism. They may have called themselves communists, but according to that definition, they are not communists. What these people were, they were oligarchs. Stalin owned everything. That's the thing. Because the point is, the ideal is that everybody is equal. But if you have a premier and you have somebody who's in charge who makes all the decisions, they own the property by default. That is what's happening. In China, there are oligarchs. There are a few rich people that own everything. It's actually hyper-capitalism. This is the problem. They keep saying, I don't like communism. I'm like, okay, yes, you watched Red Dawn 100 times. I get it. But that's not real life. I'm sorry. And what you're doing is you're strawmanning what the political ideology is to fit your kind of conservative ideology. That's a problem. The thing is, when in this situation, what communism means is that everybody owns everything. Like a kibbutz, like there's an idea that people live on this space and everybody owns everything, like a hippie commune. That's the idea of like what communism is. Everybody owns everything. Cool, that's fine. You would have to, there's a lot of trust, there's a lot of agreement type of stuff that you need to do. Cool beans. My big problem is that people are like, well, Stalin is a communist. He's not. Stalin is an oligarch and a monarch. That's what he is. He's just the czar. He's another form of a czar. And that's the problem, that just because he's calling himself a communist doesn't mean he is one. And I love a person who actually was a real communist was George Orwell. And George Orwell talks about it in 1984 and Animal Farm, where he critiques these people. He's like, dude, you're not really communists. What you're doing is you're actually consolidating power for yourself. And that's literally what these these entities did. The Ministry of Truth, they called themselves Truth, but they were actually the Ministry of Falsehood. So these people are calling themselves communists, but they're actually hyper-capitalists. That's the problem.
Yeah. I will say, when it comes to all the different ones, from capitalists, communists, socialists, all that stuff, I don't really align with any of them. I'm more aligned with resource-based, economy, where we make stuff that is needed for humanity, not just filling our house and our life full of junk that we don't really need. I mean, it's nice to have, but if we put all of our resources into making things to better mankind and make things better so that everybody has a laptop so they can do stuff with, or check something out if they need it for a little bit of time, make sure that everybody has the things they need, but you don't. And that's the problem is whenever I say you wouldn't really own anything, but you'd still be able to get things you need. And then that's where a lot of people here in the United States go, oh yeah, they just want to make it so we don't own anything. And, and I'm like, well, technically you don't really own anything, because when you die, you're not taking it with you. You don't own it. You're just holding on to it for a short time, So, at the end of the day, it's just, I'm more of like, stop making a bunch of junk, get rid of all the useless stuff that's just cluttering up the landfills, making the environment worse, making things that better people. Same thing, it's like the whole education thing. We need to have education that teaches people to think for themselves and educates people on how to identify things, from mental health issues to doing CPR and many other things, gardening, teach people how to take care of themselves and others instead of teaching people to be a cog in the machine. So.
Peeping asked me to read a couple of his other messages. The idea of communism, not the not this one first. All right, Max, you don't defend the atrocities that happen. You like the idea. Yeah, pretty much. I don't think forcing anyone into anything is a good idea. My highest held political belief is democracy. If people want to commit a mistake, I think it's their right, their choice. And I am all for democracy above everything. And then we can get into the other discussion. But I just made it. Yes, if you want to say, if I missed another comment, you can post it again. I'm sorry. And the idea of communism, not the atrocities. I hope I explained myself. Yeah. I don't defend any kind of violence, and the people that are communists that advocate for violence and for the violent overthrow of the bourgeoisie, I definitely disagree with them on that too. And Ashton says, my life literally does not exist without socialism. I'm paid to stay home, attend school, and feel better. In a different place, I would have been thrown in a black hole. And it's always good to help everyone. I think everyone is deserving of help from the government or from the system. And this is the message that he wanted me to read. In the US, the worst with politics are the families divided, random people arguing and hating each other, all to choose one of the two, to take money from our pockets with most of our slaves of our salary.
Yeah,
and that is one of the problems of the current economic system. But let's drop the
the
political debate, because I don't know. some people ask me, I might do a show speaking about my political thoughts and why I can justify them. And we might get that soon, because on another stream, someone asked me, I think it was on MC Toon, but people get really triggered when you mention communism or when you mention the left, particularly in the US, because I think specifically in the US, there's this sort of ingrained hate, but I don't agree. And we can definitely discuss ideas, and I'm a really approachable person. We can talk. I won't get upset. And I understand that you might have been taught to hate communism, and I don't fault you for that. So going back to the debate, because I just brought this as an example, and we did like a massive derail into the topic, but I'm glad that at least I could get some points across. I'm glad that Isa understands like pretty much exactly what my position is regarding that. And is there anything left on the debate? We didn't get many super chats, and most of them were on my side, I would say, on the side of the ark not being true, which is kind of comforting. I think that the fundamentalist view of the Bible, it takes, and I'm going to say one more time, it takes away from the text. I don't have a problem if you want to see some spiritual guidance on the Bible or in any holy book, really. It's your prerogative. It becomes a problem when it becomes you want to legislate other people's lives, or when you want to just overturn science just because it doesn't fit your narrative. I'm sorry, the science is what the science is. And many people say this thing. There's actually someone in the MDD Discord who has the same idea, that he's going to write a paper and somehow overturn radiometric dating. And that makes no sense, dude. If there was any problem with radiometric dating, someone would have figured it out, because there's a monetary incentive. If you debunk anything in science, like if you debunk any of the fundamental things in science, you will get a Nobel Prize, and you will get, I think it's $1 million. And so you have an incentive, and people have certainly tried, but there is nothing there. There's nothing to debunk about radiometric dating. I'm sorry that you don't like it, but it is what it is.
Or they'll say that the whole thing is rigged because the people in charge are trying to push a narrative. You know, there's always something that people bring up of why, you know, things like that, you know, are so difficult. It's the same thing with, I'm forgetting his name off the top of my head. I shouldn't be forgetting because he was an amazing man. But basically, I just call him the wizard. But, you know, the guy that, you know, is trying to get people to prove that they have psychic abilities or supernatural stuff.
It's Randy. James Randy.
James Randy.
I watched his stuff. I love him. There was that crazy guy with the bowl cut in the Chinese jacket, and he was doing blowing. That's one of my favorite.
Yes.
And he puts the packing peanuts around it.
Yeah, the styrofoam is blocking my psychic ability.
And he's like, I'm not feeling too well. I'm like, dude, you're just a phony that learned this stuff.
Styrofoam makes me sick, I guess. Then.
Yeah. Or the spoon guy, you know,
Uri Geller. Uri Geller.
Gadabra, talk show host. Well, I'm forgetting his name. The guy that ran the Tonight Show originally.
Uri Geller.
No, yeah, but the guy that ran the Tonight Show originally, like, he hated that guy to no end. So he got James Carson Daly.
Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson. You know, he had James Randy come on to literally debunk that guy because he couldn't stand him at all. He's like, I want you to come on and thrash this guy on TV. You know, it'd be so, you know, interesting. But I still hate that spoon guy because of him. He got the Pokemon Abracadabra banned for quite some time. Alakazam, because he was like, you're making a Pokemon off of me. I don't think you're copywriting. Like, eat a dick, dude.
I look nothing like you, dude. Shit.
Yeah. Pokemon's better than you because he's actually got real psychic abilities.
One of the things I was thinking during the debate was like, he has a really big hang up with radiometric dating, because when someone brought up the heat problem, the heat problem has nothing to do with the radiometric dating. It's just the proposition that if the continents shifted to their current positions from Pangea in such a short span of time, the oceans would boil, and that's pretty much the end of it. But he would refuse to listen to what I was saying and went back to radiometric dating. But I think I made the case, and I explained that as best I could in that section of the Q&A. And there's another thing that if I had prepared, I would have brought up, that is the KT boundary. I just remember like the name of the counter argument to the flood is called that, the KT boundary, but I don't remember the specifics. That's why I didn't bring it up, because I wouldn't have had the argument like constructed. But I would like to do a flood debate sometime. I find that one is really fun, and I feel like it doesn't have any like actual stakes. So I would be down to do another flood debate at some point, because I find it funny, and you get to say poop. So
I would highly recommend watching Erica Gutzik-Gibbon, watching her videos on some of these topics of radiometric dating, because some of the points that Evidence for God brought up regarding like Mount St. Helen and how we can properly date materials that are on those volcanoes using radiometric dating, she sort of addressed in terms of how scientists like approach the situation and can explain like the widely different readings that you can get and what dates are actually valid for you to read from using certain tactics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And depending on the sample, depending on the type of radiometric dating that they use, they all have an effective range in which they work best. So you need to go a lot into the science. And I got into pretty much the radiometric debate with someone on the MDD Discord just a few days ago. And I went back and looked at the process of how we get carbon-14 into, and I explained it. And I'm pretty sure that he doesn't really know exactly how that works, because he just has the default setting that, oh yeah, this doesn't work. And the good thing is that I've gone through, I find it an interesting subject. So I've gone through this info in the past. Take care, Freedom House. Have a good night. I've gone through this info in the past, and I remember a lot of the arguments that they use, and it was pretty much just the default arguments with a little bit of ancient aliens sprinkled around. Isa Brett W says, go join God Logic 2.0 live.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, we can go all together and start some rockets if you want. I'm more pumped.
Let's raid. We'll become raiders.
We can go debate. Yeah, because God is fake.
Well, if you're gonna take the Bible literally and then you're gonna make stuff up that isn't even in the Bible, how does that? That's a contradiction again in itself. Because if you want to take the Bible literally, you're gonna have to take it literally, and you're not. And depending on the interpretation of the Bible too, it can make someone, and it's not clearly written. So if they wanted it to be more precise or more concise, it would actually help people in not misinterpreting it.
It's a short story, as we read today. We read it in less than 10 minutes. It's a short story. It has no information. And Isa said, for example, nails. If you want to do nails, you have to go get the ore, and then you have to smelt the ore, and then you have to make the nails, and then you have to wait for them and maybe potentially harden them or go through a process. It's not as easy as this guy thinks.
Yeah, or like the guy.
But in 10 years, carbon dating will be useless.
One things that made me laugh with that one guy was like he was bringing up like, well, if you look at how many blood types there are 8. So that, that matches up with this. He's taking all these numbers of stuff in the body and DNA and all this other stuff and being like, well, if you look at the amount of numbers of these people and that and this, it all, I'm like, correlation does not mean or something like that.
Yeah, correlation does not mean causation, but that's funny. Just assuming that they all had different blood types. It's like, yeah, you know how that was funny. That was like, dude, that's just blood numerology. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
and I'm
no explanation. Like,
I don't even. Every time I need my blood type, I have to call my mother because I don't remember it.
Well, now we have 8 planets, so I guess that lines up with the people on the Ark, you know? I mean...
I guess trees are God, too, because they don't die.
Yes, probably. They're eternal.
They live forever.
They're gods. Tree gods.
No, what we're talking... And this is something that I know because of the Muslims that claim the Quran is scientific. This is an observed phenomena. But if you know anything about hydromechanics, you know that, yes, you have the brown water from the river, the blue water from the ocean, and there's a line. But in that line, the water is constantly mixing because water mixes. If you put salt water and fresh water in a thing and you mix it, it mixes faster. But if you put it and you mix it and you leave it like that, the water, the concentration lowers because that's what water does. And in high school, you do experiments with this. You do that same kind of experiments with acids and with bases. Like, this is basic hydrodynamics.
Well, it's like a semi-permeable membrane. Like, the reason your skin shrivels up when you're like in the shower too long or something like that is because the concentrations of fluids like in between two elements of a semi-permeable membrane will follow one of the laws of thermodynamics, where we have a high like the same way we have a high energy state and low energy state, high concentrations of something and low concentrations of something will try to equalize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
well, it's just like...
I hold on one second. Sammy McBride says, Flirt say that the stars are dancing angles inside of the firmament. For a moment, it did seem like I was talking to a flat earther with the argument that this guy was making. I was like, dude, this is really like a flat earth conversation without talking about the flat earth. This is like amazing.
Yeah. And I will say about the mixing of waters, it'd be kind of like if you make a device, have like a flat area, and then you have like 2 ramps and you pour the 2 different, muddy water and fresh water together. They're not going to mix instantly. It's going to take a little bit. You wait long enough and they'll eventually mix. It's just, and that's like, because I see it all the time of people being like, the Atlantic Ocean doesn't mix with the Pacific Ocean. Here's a picture, and it's like, that's not the picture. You're looking at a different picture from something else. Like, don't take what you heard on the internet, or better yet, social media. And that's one reason why I'm kind of on the fence with the whole social media thing now. It's just because people, especially religious people, will post all these crazy things, and I just read the comments. People are like, yeah, this is so true because I had a weird experience of this or that. And it's like don't just take what you see or somebody says and instantly believe it. Do your own research, based on what you've heard from somebody else. Now, if the person, if you're actually debating the person, you ask for research like what you did, and they go, well, just go look it up yourself. It's like, well, we're literally having a debate. So it's best for you to give me the information you have. Then, now if somebody's watching, like later on, watching the debate that you had, then you're probably gonna have to go and do some digging on your own. But it's like, but at the end of the day, it's like, give me the research that you're bringing up now that I'm actually talking to you.
Yeah, one thing that, for example, I never thought that my first debate on MDD would be like this impromptu, but I always think that if I had to prepare a debate for MDD, I would collect all my evidence of everything I'm going to talk about in my opening. I would collect all the links, and I would put them in a Google Drive folder, and I would share it with everyone in the side chat, in the chat of the stream, so that everyone can get the evidence that I'm talking about. Maybe a notepad with a list of links, or if I have papers, send the papers. And I always think that if I have evidence to give, I will give it not only to my opponent, but also to the audience, so that they don't have to go and search. And that's why I was so kind of a little bit pissed that he said, oh yeah, I brought evidence, but you're not giving me anything. You're just saying words. Give me the evidence. And
Yeah.
I don't know. And also one thing that we've mentioned before, if you're going to do a debate, don't debate on your freaking phone, man. Like,
Yeah.
Dude, come on.
And I will say, you saying that you would give the information to the audience as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, because I've watched a lot of MDD debates, and usually like the people debating will give the information to each other, but it's like, what about us? Like, we also want to see this information too. It's like, how am I going to fight it if you're not giving me where to go? It's like, I could punch in the information, but then get a completely different site or information that doesn't correlate with what you read. It's like, that's why I wish that, like the people debating would give those links and stuff to MDD, so then they can put it in the description, be like, here's what this side's information is, and here's what this side's information is, so you can do your own research as well, looking into what they're claiming. Because it's just like what I was saying during the pre-show, is when we were watching his video on atheism. It's like, does he have any of these links in his description? It's like, I want to see this research he's been looking up. I want to know. Like, don't just tell me, give me some links or something I can go to look it up, because at the end of the day, it's like, I want to learn too. I want to question my own way of thinking, because it's just like, I've told a lot of people, like, when I was younger, I used to believe the whole moon landing was fake until Mythbusters came along and actually showed with actual models and stuff, and I was like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense now. Well, I was stupid.
Julie says he himself is evidence of God. It's probably what he'd say. I want to show you something. I have here since I started debating, I have on my browser a bunch of evidence that I find. And when I find something interesting here, this is a paper debunking the miracle of the Virgin of Guadalupe painting, because one time someone brought this up, and I spent like a couple of hours searching, and I found an actual paper that goes into the infrared analysis of the painting, and says, yeah, underneath what you see, there is the sketch of the painting, and there is another attempt. So the painting that you see is covering the sketch and the first draft of the painting itself. And then I also have my anti-flat earth folder and a bunch of stuff. So every time I find something that I'm interested in, I save it. And I would definitely, if I had time to prepare, I would definitely put those links in something and share it with, not only with the opponent, but with the audience, because I would be like, I would be insanely ashamed if someone said, oh, you have no evidence for what you're saying.
Yeah. Just speaking of that, wasn't there a statue that was designed off that like, supposedly it was like bleeding blood or something, and then eventually scientists came along and found out it was like, I think it was like some kind of algae or something. It wasn't actually blood. Based on that?
No, the one I remember about that, it was a statue that was crying, but it was basically because it had a plumbing pipe underneath, and it was causing like water to come out, and it was actually sewer water.
No, because I remember it like being red, and like they looked into it, and then there was like something in there that was making it look red. Because I know that there's algae that when it's activated, it'll actually make water look like blood and stuff. So, but that just popped in my head real quick.
Catherine says, you were excellent, Max. My phone crashed earlier and I only got it just working few. I wasn't sure if it would restart. Luckily to get it back on, the screen was frozen. I'm chilling now. Thank you, Catherine, for being here. Thank you for your support. And thank you, everyone who has been with us in the after show. I'm going to wrap it up. We're coming up on 2 hours, and my voice is pretty much giving away because I've been speaking for so long. So I'm going to hand it over to Isa. We're going to do the inverse round. Isa, give us your final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you for being here, buddy.
Thanks, partner. I'm really impressed with you, Max. You did a great job kind of doing a pitch hint. I was expecting Ocean to be here, and like you said, this is his field. I think it was great that you showed up, and I think you did a great performance. I am kind of disappointed in a lot of these sort of theist approach. I think they need to not assume their opponent's position. I think that there needs to be more sincerity. The important point of the debates in general is for us to grow in knowledge and information. Similar to what DJ Batman was saying, we need to not come in to defeat other people. The goal is for growth. That's the most important thing of it. We're supposed to, learn from these conversations. If there's gaps in knowledge, we learn from them. That's the most important situation in engaging this. And we need to be sincere. We have to be a sincere interlocutor in debates. So that was just one thing that I was kind of disappointed by. But I also think it's a space for growth and hope for better conversations where we can work on having a deeper conversation where we can learn. And I really like that we have these pre-shows and after shows because we as a team are learning. We're learning here on the panel and we're learning in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Isa, I appreciate you so much. Batman, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Kind of like what I've been saying, at the end of the day, it's like, and kind of like what Isa brought up that I said, which is, like if you're debating somebody, it's good to know what each side has to say, but at the same time, getting the information that what they're getting and actually be able to everybody to read it. Cause it's like when you watch flat earth debates or anything like that, I don't think it's necessarily to change the person's mind that you're debating. Cause a lot of the times it's going to be pretty hard. I think it's more reaching the people watching, the ones that may be on the fence or not too far over the fence, that you can, get them some new information. They learn, they go, hey, okay, I was wrong on this, but I'm glad I know it now. And that's why I believe debates are good to have, as long as they don't divulge into name calling and trying to take the other person down. Because at the end of the day, debates should be about growth and should be about learning, not tearing down the other person. Because we all get misled down the wrong road because we listen to certain people. There's lots of information throughout our lives that we end up learning was false, and it's good to learn new things, but at the end of the day, I just wish more people that debated, that had evidence for their claim would actually allow everybody to see it so that we can know more. But and like Isa said, you did a great job, and right. I hope they get you on more. So
I'll give the list of the topics that I can talk about to Ryan, and hopefully we get a bit more of me on MDD. Before I let you go, Mo, I give you your turn, Mogi. Chris Hatchett, thank you so much for all the support today, both all over on MDD and with your super chats on MDD and here. Thanks so much, Chris Hatchett. Chase Hatchett, sorry, says poop. Yes. I was so glad that I could get, because yesterday I was talking to Austin and I told him, dude, you have to please say, talk about the poop problem. And he said, well, I might mention, but no, please say it like that. And I will be happy if you just mention the poop problem on the debate. And he told me that he would have done it, but it was so fun that I got to do it myself. Mogi, final thoughts before we wrap it up?
I guess I'll just sort of echo both Batman and Isa's sentiments here. Batman brought up a great point that you do need to be cognizant of the environment you're in, right? And we're communicating with an audience, and I think it's equally important that we need to make sure we're not strawmanning our positions and other people's positions in order to be able to communicate effectively to the audience and actually achieve an understanding. And then I think at the same time, right, since this is a practice where we're interlocuting, this is an opportunity for us to refine our understanding and improve our own positions, right? And so not using that opportunity, I think, is wasteful.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here also and for coming to the pre-show and the after show. Billy, final thoughts before we wrap it up. My voice is like 2 seconds away from giving out completely.
Well, good job, Max. Again, I feel like you've had a couple experiences before with debates in Discord, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, for MMD or MDD, it was your first time, so I feel like at times, you may have been a little bit nervous, but everybody has that type of thing. Evidence is God did okay by only teaching me maybe a couple things I didn't know about, but nothing about the Noah's Ark that I didn't know about. He was referencing things that I didn't know. I had to look up and make sure it was correct. And the Bible says so. So that is good enough evidence for me. Nah, but obviously it was for him because I remember him saying that at one point. The Bible says so, and I think that was closer to the end. And then I stopped. I tuned out after that because that was just my breaking point.
All right, thank you so much. I want to thank everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed my experience for the first debate on MDD, and I have a couple of messages before my voice completely goes away. Sammy McBride said he showed up the backing with the backing of his and it doesn't work. It's proving time. I overslept and missed Max debates. I will absolutely go back and watch the whole thing. Sorry, I missed it live, Max. No problem. You never have to apologize for that. Thank you so much for all your support on the channel. And BTF Wayne says, bottom line, in theism debates, only one side observes reality and reports back. The other side needs reality to fit their pre-written report. And with that, we're going to wrap it up for tonight before I become completely mute. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Remember to do the social thing is like, share, subscribe. Send this to your significant other. Send it to a friend. Yell, subscribe to Matters Now in the corner of your street. That way you can spread the message and
join the Discord.
We can grow the channel. Go to the Discord, Matters Now Discord, and you can also find me on MDD. And if you want to debate me and come tell me you are fucking wrong because you're a filthy atheist, you can do that, and I will be nice to you and I will smile and reply back. So thank you everyone so much. Take care. It was an awesome night. I'm really glad that I got to do this and share it with all of you. And we'll be ready maybe the next time that I debate. Isa can do the hosting of the watch party. We'll get those permissions set up for the future. Thanks so much. Have a good night. We love you all. Take care and be good. Yay.